Hey, good morning and welcome everybody to World Bible School Media. This is Dr. Bill with World Bible School, and this is Friday Morning Conversations. I love this show, and I guess I say that about all my shows, but I want to say this about this show, that each week on this broadcast we bring you teachings or concepts which are beyond what is often considered normal in Christian conversations, so that we can see and discover more of the eternal Christ who is within us, even from before the foundation of the universe. So, welcome today, as my guest, Apostle Brian Christian, is back with me. Good morning, my brother. How are you there?
I am excellent, Bishop. It's been a wonderful week, and a lot of revelation is being poured out right now. That's really bringing us into such an alignment like never before. It is just blowing my mind what's happening in the world today.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I agree. So much going on, so much wonderful stuff. The thing about life is there can be, as Scripture says, it rains on the just and the unjust. There can be the good and the bad, and the ugly. But what you focus on determines. We used to say your attitude determines your altitude, and I just say this: that what you choose to focus on is really what rules your day, and you can have the best day possible, you can have the worst day possible. Just all depends on you. So I have posted Apostle Brian's book, The Everlasting Gospel of Christ. Also, Father of Glory Global Ministries.org. Their website. I'm going to put that down here also. And I want to say right from the start that as you come on board, as you start watching this, you can support Apostle Brian and Shawana and their family, just because just because you love them, just because they're wonderful people, just because they're sharing the gospel of Jesus. And I would encourage you to do that. Just do that today. So. I always struggle with spelling Shawana, Shau.
Yep, AUNA. It's actually Shauna, but you were close.
Shauna. I put too many words in that,
That's
but
okay.
anyway, or too many letters rather. Uh, Here's their website. I think this will work. Father of Glory Global Ministries. There we are. And so you can click on there on giving and be a blessing to them. All right. So we are back with part two. I can't believe it's just part two, but I know that means next week is part three and the end of our sessions together for now. We've been talking about living beyond the realm of human senses. And I think this so coincides with last night's broadcast with Dr. Kay Fairchild. For everybody watching, if you missed that, please go back and look at that as we address the question, are we human or spirit through and through? Last time we left off with talking about the different levels of consciousness and how they lead us into our individual maturity process. Now, I think where we ended up last time, Apostle, is you wanted to come back and address that. But I like that particular concept here of how that these levels of consciousness lead us into our individual maturity process. I love the maturity process. I want to tell you that there was a day and a time in my life where I hated the process. I despised the process. The process was painful because all I did was focus on the things that happened in the process. But there came a time where maturity began to take place, and the journey was no longer painful, but the journey was a joy, and I learned to embrace that. So I'll just say this, and then I want to get you talking about this. It is essential to know and understand the deep things of the realms of the Spirit of God that leads us down in our human experience, or leads us through our human experience. So you stated this. You said the five senses must go through the death of the ego in order to reanimate those same senses. And when we have crossed over into a single eye perspective, our senses respond from the Christ mind instead of duality. And so I want you to go ahead and just take it from here and talk to us.
Okay. Well, when you're dealing with this, first and foremost, we have to understand what's really going on behind the scenes
Hmm.
of this process of maturity. As long as we are in this place where we're trying to get somewhere, even
Hmm.
in the journey, okay, we're not trying to get anywhere in our journey, in the sense of bettering ourselves, as though we lack something, as though we're less than who we are. And I think it comes down to the why behind the what, or the intentions behind discerning what we're currently going through that is actually maturing us. That is not a threat. As long as we have threats in our life when it comes to the process of maturity, we miss the understanding of what we're actually in. And so, like you said, it's a painful process. But if people understand that the pain we're experiencing in the process of maturity isn't a confrontation to annihilate us or take something from us or add something to us, but more a extraction point of the conclusions we've had about ourselves that are now
Hmm.
surfacing to be dealt with. And so I know in my own life, and a lot of times, and I'll give you an example. You just got a promise that God's going to do this, this, and this. Okay, you're going to
Hmm.
prosper,
Hmm.
be in health, even as your soul prospers, whatever. And next thing you know, you can't think. You got all these bills, you know, um,
Yeah.
and you're starting to feel sick. And the first thing that comes out of us is, "What the heck, God? I thought you said." Now, what am I going to do? Well, that response is not actually responding to the current situation. The current situation is extracting out of us the internal dialogue that was already there, that was trying to get somewhere in the first place. And so that's where the ego comes in. The ego is always trying to fix you, protect you, um, you know, talk yourself in and talk yourself out, prove yourself to yourself, all of these types of things. And so our present situation is always there to extract an echo of what is motivating us that now needs to be realigned.
Hmm.
And so that realignment is vitally important. And so if we can understand that, and I had this encounter a couple of weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, actually, tomorrow, where I was in another season where I kind of was I plateaued. I was kind of like, okay, I'm kind of getting bored here. I need some more motivation. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. We went from driving all around the country to parking. And we also started to experience some financial issues because of that. And so I'm like, okay, God, do I sit? Do I move? Do I do this? Just throw me a bone here. Tell me, what am I supposed to do? No answer. So as I'm sitting there, I was taken into this 8-hour encounter where I experienced an out of the body experience, similar to, in fact, I could not. I was more leaning towards the fact that I had already died, passed on, and didn't get a chance to tell my family. Okay, I was gone. But where I was a place that I was always at. And I was actually looking into this visible human experience, this experience of mankind. I was looking into it, and it was though as I was living it, but I was outside of it the entire time, just contemplating it or considering it. This is all at the same time. And I'm in this realm of consciousness where everybody is at. So everybody, all my loved ones I thought I left behind, were all right there as one. And we were all interacting, okay? And every time I would see a devastation on earth, I would look around in this realm of the glorified state of divinity as consciousness, all as one. And all I'd hear is, "Isn't it beautiful? Isn't that beautiful what's happening there?" And I'm like, "Beautiful? That's devastation. How can that be beautiful?" And then I saw two wheels turning, and they were overlapping each other like like a clock. And one was forgetting who you were, and the other was remembering who you are. And I
Hmm.
was watching how God was having this peekaboo moment of divinity with himself in us, every time we forgot so that we'd have an opportunity to remember. Have you ever been in that place where you finally, like, the smoke clears and you remember, and you're in that moment of, wow, this is it. And then, your prayer is, don't let me leave this place, because of other times we forgot, right? And we kind of get stuck in the just walking through the motions of life, and we forget the depth of who we are. And it was like the Father was saying, all of that is on purpose, because every time you remember, you eventually come to the end of being satisfied with what you remember. You ever notice that? That we eventually plateau and we lose that freshness. And so we're always trying to not go here, when that is self-preservation, which basically means this: as long as anything in my life is a threat, I have put a stop to maturity. All right. So nothing can threaten you. Everything is aiding you to come into the realization of who you've always been, and to transition out of reliance upon the independent emotions and thoughts of man that has kept us from really breaking open that place of peace, rest, goodness, fruitfulness, and the absence of striving. And so it's all on purpose. There isn't one thing that isn't on purpose in your life, that, when I say that, that's out of control, what you cannot control. And anything you can control is where your mind has already been renewed enough to partner with grace.
Okay, so I think that the place of maturity is when I quit allowing the things I can't control, or the things
Yes.
that are disastrous, that they influence my mind to the place that it controls me, that my focus goes to that, instead of my focus being on things above, or on a higher realm of thinking.
Yes.
The scriptures tell us very clearly in Colossians 3 to set our affection, or set our mind, set our imagination on things above, or that higher realm, that Christ mind place of thinking, and not on things of the earth. I think that things that are earthly are things that are fleshly, things that are not of our true identity. And let's face it, that if we are spirit, slow down to visibility, and if we are spirit, soul, and body as one, and we are reflected in some human form or flesh form, I don't want the reflection of who I actually am to be some facade or some fake message to everybody else. I want to walk as Christ, and of course, the renewed state of mind is exactly that. But our concern is not sometimes, and I hate to use the word concern because it is a root of its mother, which is fear. But our concern sometimes is that of all the things that we are not walking in. And the Bible says in 1 John 2:20, and I know we wanted to go here from last time. It says, but in the New King James, but you have an anointing from the Holy One, and you know all things. Turning right around to 1 John 2:20 in the Passion Translation says, but the Holy One has anointed you, and you all, I know it has to do with who Paul is talking to, the group, that we're all included, but I'd like just for myself, this is just for me, say that the Holy One has anointed you, and you all, including the Holy One as one, know the truth. Or literally, this could read, you have the capacity to know all things. And so the supernatural reality here is that you were created in Father's image and likeness to mirror who He is, even in the midst of this human form experience and all the junk that you walk through. You're still here to first of all get a revelation of and understand the mind of God. You came here upright, even though we kind of took a side road, a detour that led us down a fleshly, human controlled experience. But the fact is that even in the midst of that, we have the capacity to know all the things that God knows, since His mind was implanted within us at creation. So I think you had said something to the effect that this knowing of all things from the spiritual mind that lives in the reality of oneness is not separation. So, where are we at when it comes to duality? That one of the first things we started talking about this morning. When it comes to duality, how I'm to function as He is, so am I in this world. Yet there's so much duality of thought that duality, I think what we're saying here is duality actually brings us back to a state of separation.
Yes. Now, duality in and of itself is not bad, because there are levels of it that bring the contrast, that bring, see, for instance, I could say duality, the moment you say duality generally, and
Mm-hmm.
I think what we have to get down to is wrapping our identity in duality. But duality in and of itself is a visible physical realm of the infinite and the finite. That would be duality, or father and son, giving and receiving. That's also the masculine and the feminine. So that's just simply the flip side. Now, that aspect is divine. And I think that's where we see the contrast or the expression of Christ in that interaction. But duality in the sense of my life on the inside of the kingdom within is now focused outwardly as my reality, and I've lost contact, or in a sense, I have amnesia from my origin and who I
Okay.
truly am. That entanglement is like Adam in the garden. They were hiding in the trees. What that is we always hide in our opinions and conclusions. That is the natural man. We always hide in everything that happened to us that we thought wasn't God. We hide as victims in our minds. And so, for me, the very foundation of consciousness is the eternal. Without the eternal understanding that we're sealed to the day of redemption, everything we're walking through was commanded the end from the beginning. When I say that, I don't mean everything that happens to you was God's plan. It's not what I'm saying. I think there's a balance there, but I know that there's two aspects. Everything God made was good. So we know everything that's happening in your life that you cannot control, that you did not plan or order, even if it was at somebody else's mindset against you, that there's sovereignty hidden there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Everything in there hidden in there is good. The end of the matter. The other side is God works everything together for good. So he even sums up all the decisions we make, all the strivings we make, and he still leads it to come full circle. Still
Mm-hmm.
leads it. That's why when you fall asleep in Christ, you have an opportunity to wake up. And in the waking up, his mercies are new every morning. So we constantly, through the sleeping and waking process that we do regularly, no matter how much we try to hold on to never falling asleep at any level,
Uh-huh.
you'll find that we eventually level out and fall asleep at that level to need to be awakened again at another level, going from glory to glory. This is not the flesh slipping back. This is the wheels within wheels bringing us full circle into a constant wow moment of freshness and embrace, so that we can continue to go deeper and deeper in the Father.
Mm-hmm.
And even though we know all things in the Father as Spirit, that knowing of all things as Spirit was very limited. And I'm going to say that knowing God as Spirit without this visible human experience is actually very limited in the manifestation of the attributes of God, like mercy, grace, goodness, unconditional love. None of those aspects are needed in the mind of God without contradictions or the appearance of duality and these types of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll find in 2 Corinthians 4 that he commanded light out of darkness to shine the glorious gospel of God in the face of Jesus Christ. And so what that reveals to us is expression. That is visible expression that is constantly unveiling and upgrading. And that's where you get the word finite. Finite is the constant moving and multiplicity and diversity of expression is constantly changing, while the infinite is is the consistency of God never changing. In a sense, God paused in one expression. And so this is why, when we start out this journey of discerning how to kind of break free from the mind games we play on ourselves, we have to understand that we didn't begin a journey we're trying to recover. The finite and the infinite, the finite didn't come from the infinite and the finite were always one. And the finite became conscious in that oneness in which we are experiencing this slowed down version of ourselves that is no threat to the divine, but where God exceeds himself by using it to manifest the divine. And it changes the whole way in which we posture in situations that we would normally think are a threat, but are really a setup to expand for God to exceed himself through it.
When we talk about the journey, and
Yes.
you hit on something that really is pulling my attention. When we talk about the journey, oftentimes what we think about is the journey of the human experience. But let's go back to origin. Because that's where my journey actually started. That's where your journey actually started. Before there was an Adam, before there was a flesh experience of what is known as the fall, which was actually confusion that brought him to a mistaken identity. Before that, I started a journey. Now, for me, what I'm learning, I feel like is causing me to bypass Adam's journey, Abraham's journey, Moses' journey, Noah's journey, all the way through Scripture. I want to bypass every experience they had or every misinterpretation of God that they had and start my journey from origin. But I can't really, one thing I can't ignore is that I think it's not only Jeremiah, but Isaiah, it might be just Jeremiah, that talks about that we were birthed forth from the womb of God. So that's origin. That's an ellipsis, some missing information that we can discover in the Hebrew language that points us a contextual clue right back to origin. But at some point, the light of who I am shone forth, and I don't want this to sound, like I am Christ and etc., etc. It's not that. I am one with Christ, and I have a lot of his experience going on in me. But here's the thing: a light shone forth, and that light manifested, or the reflection of that light is my flesh persona.
Yes.
Okay, so it's almost as if it started another journey. And this journey started out with, I came here uprightly, but I began to be influenced and indoctrinated by the things around me and the people around me, until now I'm really so involved in this human experience, I forget the origin of my journey. So as we're learning, we're now saying this, okay? I am spirit, soul, and body as one spirit, and I'm now bypassing even, I don't want to ignore, but bypassing even the ups and downs of my human experience, and saying that I have been on a supernatural journey ever since origin, and I'm learning how to live out the image and likeness of God so that I can influence you, because that's what grace is. It's the divine influence of God on the heart, or on the inside, on the mind, and its reflection in my life. So there's a divine influence that I started in, so I want to continue on the journey of divine influence so that I can constantly more and more reflect the image of my Father to all mankind. Did I say I was God? I'm not saying that I am God. I am very much God-like, and I'm God in the lowercase sense, but I am, again, David defines being gods, you are gods, as a hair width difference, or the smallest measurement of distance possible between the Creator and the created. So, in essence, I don't want to preach duality here, but I see my Father and I honor my Father as my creator, but my Father sees me and he sees no difference whatsoever. There is no separation in his mind. And I think I can have a no separation encounter with God and yet know that I am the created of the creator, and I can be happy with that.
Yes. When I had this encounter, the visuals, maybe this will help with what you said for people to grasp.
Yes.
Just imagine I'm very much like my background, but it's all around me. Okay, all these colors, and it's just simply consciousness. When I was in it, and I was in it for 8 solid hours, that blew my mind. It took another week, and I'd grab my wife's arm and I'd say, "Honey, am I still here? Am I still here?" I didn't know if I was in an in-between place that my mind had not reconciled, that I had passed away. And so I was kind of in this in-between place in my mind, even though I'm in this realm, my mind is thinking, did I not realize I died? And my life was hidden, but it was actually kind of scary at first because I couldn't grasp which reality was reality. It almost sounds like post-traumatic a little bit, but it wasn't. And as I'm in this realm, it's just God. And it's just the thoughts of God. And in that, I would look to the left and the right, and I would see these wormholes, like into other realms. And as I would look in, I would live out this life. I'd live out that life. I'd live out this life. I live out that life. And I think it connects a little bit to the way reincarnation has been interpreted. Now, here's my thing. I'm not a reincarnation guy like it's been taught. Okay.
Right.
I believe in the incarnation, but I think the incarnation is more than just Jesus coming 2,000 years ago, because he's always been a body, in the sense of every member, every part doing its share. So I think we've all been included in that beyond just the timeline reflected version of the gospel. The lamb slain from the foundation of the world is the finished work. All right. But that wasn't Jesus suffering in heaven or something. Okay. It's the concept of a God thought that's completed before it's unveiled visibly. And the visible manifestation is an echo. So we could say Jesus came and died on the cross 2,000 years ago, according to time and generations. But from the quantum, we can say that the echo of the lamb slain from the foundation of the world has now become visible. Like me looking at the stars. The stars, a lot of them, we're seeing the past. They've already burned out. We haven't caught up with the present. So Jesus coming was us catching up to the present reality of that which has always been, echoing as a visible experience or as a consciousness. And so when I was in this realm, I realized that what makes you in the visible realm isn't an individuality, but it is the conscious, it is the corporate or global consciousness in another dimension that is projecting as individuality. So you're not even made up of your own consciousness. You're made up of all humanity's consciousness, which isn't in a humanity form, but in a God thought form that is considering a matter. And so in that consideration, matter manifests as a life and as a journey. And in that posture and stance, I got to be careful that I don't avoid my interaction in a visible level out of fear or out of because of confrontations, and I now get stuck in the eternal in an extreme. That whole posture of the eternal now gives me place to not be threatened by the environment I am conscious of. And so now I can step in, and that's where we begin to mature faster. So the whole acceleration you were talking about, and I see this in scripture. I totally believe that today we should be accelerating way faster than the days of Moses. If you look at those days, Moses, it was 40 years for them in the wilderness to get to the promised land. For Jesus, it was 40 days in the wilderness to come out in the power of the Spirit. So we can go from 40 years to 40 days. And so it's simply consciousness that is aware that manifests the acceleration. We're actually not going anywhere in anything we're walking in. In reality, we are ever before his face and going from glory to glory because veils are being lifted and we're realizing reality. So we're not letting go of this to get this or getting rid of this to obtain this. We might be walking that out in our human experience and what we think's going on, because there's another truth hidden in that has to do with our ability to communicate and articulate and to connect and to bond. But when I was in this realm, Bishop, and I'll finish with this, everything I've known of quantum, of everything I'm talking about right now, was blown away as dust in the wind. It was all blown away. And I said, well, what? Do I not teach those things? You go, oh, no, keep going, son. It's great. It's wonderful. And it has nothing to do with you attaining anything or coming to some great truth that everything's going to stand on. He said, every truth that you've been getting in your visible experience has been for the sake of bonding and for the sake of experiencing it. And he said, all of this is really not about obtaining anything. It's about the interaction, the expression, and the expansion of divine consciousness that now has a platform of expression. And I'm like, wow, it totally blew my mind, but it also lifted the false responsibility to pursue a truth, to obtain a truth, to get out of some impending threat or interruption to my life over here that is actually working for me a far more eternal weight of glory.
Amen. Amen. And I think that eternal consciousness is something we wanted to talk about this week.
Yes.
But let me also say this, that if we understand eternal consciousness, and I've been teaching for a while now about our collective consciousness.
Yes.
And when I say that, it started out as that I have a collective consciousness with the Christ mind, but once we begin to pursue that further, we realize that the Christ mind is a collective consciousness of all that is in the cloud of witnesses, which is all of creation. Now, I think this is how it happens. Whether you're saying the spirit realm, the supernatural realm, or the cloud of witnesses, I believe they're all synonymous with each other. So I would just say this, that every now and then, someone in the cloud of witnesses, as invisible, manifests as visible. Generally, that is a baby. Although I could take you to the book of Matthew, where just before the day that Jesus was crucified, the graves were opened, and people that were in the ground actually got up out of the ground. We're talking about mature people, because they went into the city and people knew them. So here's somebody who has not, and there's not a scriptural analysis of how many people that actually was or how few people, but it does give you the idea, if you use your supernatural imagination, that it was a good group of people that got up out of the ground and had been dead, had been buried in the natural realm, so they had ceased to be in the natural realm and go back to invisibility. Now they come back again into visibility, get up out of the ground and go into the city, and people knew who they were. These undoubtedly were Old Testament saints. Who exactly, I don't know. But back to this collective consciousness, I want to say this on this show, not to be a disruption of this stream of thought, but last night we lost one of our USA representatives, Bishop Brandon Gates. And I had posted and said to something my wife had posted, and I just said that he was that I'm going to miss him in the school. He's been an excellent student for. They were about to go into their doctorate programs, but that I know that he's looking in on us from the cloud of witnesses. So when I think about the collective consciousness or the collective mind, I think about that I am connected to every spirit. You have to see this, that every the billions of spirit beings that God created in Genesis 1:1, that he in Genesis 1:3 illuminated with his mind, are the collective consciousness. They're so joined to one another, it's one mind. You see that again in Revelation chapter 21 and 22. The voice that came from the altar from out of the temple, that voice was the collective consciousness, or the collective voice of the cloud of witnesses. And so I want to jump back for a moment, and then I want you to talk about this eternal consciousness, or this collective consciousness that we were going to address. When you said that sometimes these experiences, these out-of-body experiences, can be almost frightening, that's such a true thing. The times that I have had out-of-body experiences, I can tell you that I've had experiences where it was frightening because I didn't understand. Later in years, I wouldn't say I understood fully, but I understood better. So the experience I had was more of a surprise than a fearful moment. And I love these out-of-body experiences because it's where I am no longer enamored or controlled by that which is flesh, but I'm having a supernatural experience, and God has shown me some stuff, and that's, again, a part of my maturity process. Now, should everybody have these out of body or these supernatural experiences? I would say, yeah. I mean, nothing wrong with that. It's awesome, especially if you can hear people like us talking about it, and others where we've had these encounters. I haven't had the same kind of encounters that Apostle Brian has had. He hasn't had the same kind of encounters that I have, and so that makes both sides very interesting and a contribution to the collective consciousness of understanding. And this comes right back to knowing. I love the state of knowing. Knowing is about union, and I think you wrote this, that knowing is about union, intimacy, relationship, and reality. I think we have to embrace all of that to really begin to grasp this collective mind, or this eternal consciousness that we're a part of.
Yes, I totally agree, Bishop. And, when it comes to and I'll say this, the difference between reincarnation and the incarnation is, and reincarnation is you die, you didn't finish it, you come back again as another person. Now, I'm not going to limit what God can and cannot do in that, because nobody really knows what the mechanics of that is, how it's fleshed out in that sense. Mm-hmm. But that right there, if that's what it's built on, is time and space. Now, the moment I introduce time and space into the heart of my origin and my identity, I've already put on duality, okay? It's kind of like a journey. Let's say you're driving down the road and you've got to drive 2,000 miles. According to our mind here, we would say, yes, I'm driving 2,000 miles. But in the quantum or the eternal realm, it would be God's train of thought. It would be one thought lived out as a journey, okay? And so when we're dealing with reincarnation, the leaving, the coming back, the duality, the measuring up, the getting better and better and better, just seems like a lot of self-effort. But when you realize that there is no separation in the sense of consciousness. So in other words, if the atom is here, but the atom is in the field, mm-hmm. I'm aware of my individuality, but my reality is in the field. My reality is that every person is not an individual, but is multiple thoughts going on in one mind. So if you were to be aware of the thoughts in your mind that are going on, what are we aware of? About 1% of our reality and about 3.5% of our subconscious. And so if we're aware of 1% of what's going on inside of our minds, imagine what's going on at a 99% level there when it comes to an interaction that's a higher consciousness or way of thinking. And so if you can imagine that you don't die and leave like you think, you are simply aware of a structure that has either been culturally influenced, historically wounded influenced, and we're looking through this dim, veil, and we're trying to interpret godhood and divinity and all of these things, and we're just scratching the surface of what's actually going on, we'll realize that this eternal consciousness is simply us having a thought of a human experience that is being lived out at a level of consciousness, but is not necessarily the reality that we think it is. Now, on the flip side of that, there is a experience we are having in visible form that is not less than the mind of God. It is just simply gazing in to another mirror reflection. That's where we get the term, like, for instance, angels, right? When people have angelic visitations, they encounter at one level where that's and again, there's nothing wrong with that, but at one level that is still duality. And the duality it is that I'm seeing a separate being come to my rescue where I needed encouragement, okay? Where I needed to believe God in a certain area. So that's in my immaturity, I'm experiencing this duality. Now, it's a great experience. I don't knock it. I've had plenty of them, and I wouldn't mind having more. It's all good. But at another level of consciousness, that is me gazing in on me. That's me in eternity as this angel, or as the generations of the heavens. And I'm considering an expression that is now being lived out at another level of me simply looking in on it. And so, but me in my mankind visible experience is gazing in and meeting me in my origin and getting the intentions and the reasons for which I was sent. Kind of like Psalms 139, where it says in Psalms 139, it's your whole heaven to earth experience. It's spirit slowed down to visibility. All my members were written in the book when there was none of them. In other words, it's the contemplating of the intentions of the mind of the divine that is having a vision of a visible experience that's already been lived out from the foundation of the world, and is now contemplating it as an echo looking back at itself. And so we have this kind of, and I know this makes our mind go, whoa, but what it does to us is it takes us out of the entanglement with the cares of this life long enough to realize us looking back at ourselves. Does that make sense? And so we're in this constant flux of mirror reflections, which we call epiphanies. But you go on in Psalms 139, and it says, even in hell, your hand will lead me, or in Hades, or in Sheol, however you want to put it, okay? And then it says, all my tears were in the bottle before, and this is a beforehand visual. So in one sense, we came from another realm. In another sense, we're constantly gazing into a consideration of a realm. In another sense, we're looking back to remember everything that is and yet has always been. And so this is a constant thing that's going on in us. And when I make my bed in hell, that's the duality experience. Okay? When I make my bed in the dualistic version of me in visible form, trying to find the invisible form, even there, your hand's going to lead me to this revelation that I'm actually in a realm that never even came, that is simply gazing into a consideration known as a remembrance. It's back and forth.
Yeah. Scripture says, don't, once we've come to a level of freedom, don't go back and become entangled in the yoke of bondage again. When you move out of dualism. Now, I know that there are people, Apostle, in your life, in my life, who have said, yes, I get it, and they begin to walk in this revelation of singleness, of I and or of mine. They begin to walk in this concept of one with the eternal Christ, and then all of a sudden they seem to go back into duality because they were excessively influenced by some friend or some concept or something. And I think we have to understand that I am in control of my mind. I woke up about a half hour early this morning. I was setting up in bed and I was just Googling on my phone. Just the thought came to me about I'm in control of my mind. I'm in control of what I think, what I focus on, and that is true from a supernatural perspective, especially as spirit, soul, and body as one spirit. I am in control, and I want to be the I am. Let me back up. I am the only influencer of my soul. When
Yes.
we talk about the five senses, they become influencers that give us a perspective of this natural realm. That perspective is often and most always, and I won't say 100%, but I would say a great deal percent, it presents duality because of how the flesh sees things. But as we're learning to operate as spirit or from the Christ mind perspective, we see less and less of duality. I think this is something we didn't get to last week, that the five senses, apart from this knowing who we are, this Christ mind experience, is about seeking to know and does not have a steady place to stand. Um, just as the ways of God are about his nature, his character, and consistency. And while the acts of God are constantly changing, let me make sure that's right, constantly changing according to seasons, relationships, and the emphasis of destiny. So to try and build on what God is doing might only be stable in that season. We all go through seasons because the next season it comes, we find ourselves struggling and trying to keep our heads above the waters. But when we live from a place of the ways of God, and I want to just jump on what you said. If I ascend into the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. In the Hebrew culture, I did a course recently, and what I discovered, it's called The Truth About Heaven and Hell. And what I discovered was that in the Hebrew culture, they didn't even believe, when David said that, they didn't even believe in a literal heaven as above and a literal hell as below. It was an experience in life, and that's a lot of what we teach. So it doesn't matter what changes come because I am fixed and secure. So in this, we'll say this human experience, if I'm having a hellish experience, I can still walk as he is, so am I in this world. I can still walk there, and still this hellish experience is going around that's touching my life, but I refuse to let it invade and control my soulish state of being or my place of peace and calmness. But I can also have those times of these heavenly experiences that are out of the heavenly realms of Christ, which is often translated out of the eternal Christ. I can have those experiences, and I can find that I can rest in that higher realm of thought and never go back to the influence of this lower realm thinking, even though there's a horrible hellish thing going on in my life. So can I control what goes on in my life? I know there's things that happen, devastating things that happen that we speak into and they calm down. Sometimes they even cease to be. But what I want to do is I want to be in control. I want to remain in that Christ mind, in my Father's mind, no matter what is going on. Now, Apostle Brian, I want to just go here real quickly. We've got about 10 minutes. I want to go here real quickly. When we talk about the quantum realm, when we talk about quantum physics, and we talk about energy, and we talk about how science and the Bible has come together to embrace that. You look at medical science; they recognize that they can't control every disease or every situation that comes into these clinics or offices. They realize there's sometimes a higher power, so to speak, at work, and there's miracles that happen that cannot be explained. Such as recently, about 4 months ago, I come out of 4 braces from one day to the next morning, just boom, and they can't explain that. And so what they think is, well, we're still, X-rays don't change, X-rays don't lie, you're still going to be coming in for surgery, etc., and they can't explain that. So they try to wrap their minds scientifically around that and deal with it how they can, process it how they can. But when it comes to the energy, I just believe that what you're studying, people like Dr. Kay Fairchild and here Dr. Fay and I in World Bible School University, the level of things we're studying, we're trying to produce to our professors and to our students is a level that says, man, I can experience, I can touch God in all the vastness that He is until or even as it influences my flesh so that my flesh no longer rules my thinking, but I am in control, or I rule my thinking. I think I just went out on a limb there, but please.
Well, I think that's good, and I think that's true. You know, like we were saying earlier, the ways of God and the acts of God. Okay.
Yes.
You know, it says in Hebrews that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So, you know, what faith is a household. What faith is the many as one. That's faith. Faith isn't a mental assent. And so it says that our worlds were framed by the word of God. And so if you kind of see that, and through faith, the elders obtained a good report. This has to do with an unveiling of the ways and the acts of God. And so His ways is always the substance. That's dealing with intention. And His acts is always the outflow or expression of that intention. Now, in that, we get caught up in this visible realm as the proof of God. So kind of like, what Jesus said, the kingdom doesn't come by observation. The kingdom is within you. So what happens is we get stuck in what we've witnessed visibly in our circumstances, in our situations, that we have concluded is less than our expectations. And so what happens is that's where we get bent out of shape. Then we start questioning. And it's in all our questioning that we get stuck in that duality. All right? Because now we've got to find a way out of what we've concluded isn't right. But yet, everything, and this brings us back to control here. Self-control is the absence of needing to be in control of what you were never ordered to control, but we're simply there to remember based on that which was always built. And so there's an aspect here where wisdom builds her house in Proverbs, and it says she's crying out to the simple-minded, come on in here, come and drink of the wine and eat of the meal or the bread that I've mingled and all of this. And what that's really saying is we're on a journey here, which isn't really here since there is no time and space, but a consciousness that is looking in as a journey. And we are waking up to that which has always been built, that which has already been laid. So we're not here to build a house. That's the thing. Unless the Lord builds a house, those that labor in vain. So this whole matrix was set up for us to put on the appearance of labor through duality that would bring us to the end of our labor in reality that would unlock the fact that the house was always built and we were just simply here to remember why we built it. Kind of like you're into the movie The Matrix. I think it was the second one. Neo comes and he sits with the Oracle. Might have been the third one. No, I think it was the second one. And he's sitting with the Oracle, and you know, Zion's going to be destroyed. So no, it had to be the third one. Zion's going to be destroyed, and he's finding out about it. And he's telling the Oracle, you know, well, why didn't you tell me? Are you lying to me? He's really suspicious and thinks she's a part of the whole system. And he says, well, what decision do I make here? I need to know what I'm supposed to do. And the Oracle says, well, you didn't come here to make a decision. You came here to find out why you already made the decision. And it made complete sense to me, because we're always trying to make a decision based on our environment, when it is our mind's conclusion of the need to make a decision that has actually changed our environment or changed the appearance of our environment. So your cells will morph to give you a lens to view your life based on the conclusion of what you think your life is and isn't. Everything is formed around your opinion and your conclusion.
Come
and
on.
So you really have to break out of the mindset that has observed this life as our foundation of doctrine and belief in God, when in fact, hidden within our conclusion is an opposition that is there to realign and to break us out of the temporal realm as our reality and bring us into this God mind thought that is emanating out as a visible human experience in the first place. So there's so much to this that allows our five senses, because your five senses aren't human, and they're just human and not spirit. It's really spirit. Okay, everything is spirit slowed down to visibility. But what's happened is we have mistaken one thing for another, but also on purpose, there's been a time of mistaking it for the contrast, for the background, for the need for expression, and expansion. And so while one is on purpose, the other is temporarily lived, journeyed out until we come into maturity, till we realize Christ in us, the mystery hidden from the foundation of the world, hidden on purpose until an appointed time. And I think it's that concept that allows us to posture to begin to really see all the meaty things, the deep things that are actually happening in all of the simple things and the mundane things and the contradictory things. So it's really beautiful. And for me, I'm able to not just walk through a situation. If I'm in a contradiction, I'm not going to say it's enjoyable to go through hell. Okay, it's not. But the longer I journey this out, the less I need to rely upon my five senses in that experience from a human standpoint of I need to do something to be something. I now am seeing the goodness of God through it. I'm seeing that everything I can't control, I was never meant to. Because it's already been controlled, and I already said, yes, send me into this for a purpose greater than what I currently comprehend. So comprehension is not required for what I walk through in my human experience. Embrace it. It is embrace that is the only requirement. Because if I will embrace it as non-threatening, because I know this foundation of that which was written in a book, and I'm simply remembering it, I can now just be available for everything and anything beyond what I would limit through my conclusion. And that posture alone is what breaks open all the answers I needed to know when I no longer need to seek them.
Yes, and I would just say this, that while there are things we're still trying to grasp, things we're still trying to understand, the fact is there's some valuable information out there, ladies and gentlemen, just as you're hearing right here on this broadcast today. And I want to encourage you to go to our YouTube channel, World Bible School Media. It's just one of my 3 YouTube channels. But go to World Bible School Media and look at last week's show with Apostle Brian. Watch that, and then come back and watch this again. Now, next week we're going to come back with part 3 and the conclusion of this series. But my goodness, this is so good. We didn't get to today. We didn't get to things like we wanted to touch on 2 Corinthians 4:18 and Romans 8:6. So we can come back next week and grab those. But if you'll stay right there, Apostle Brian, we'll talk about well we're going to go next week and kind of nail that down. So listen, everybody, thank you for watching today. We appreciate you. This is my last show for this week, but we'll be back next week with Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. That's the game plan. Unless we have to cancel for some reason, always will be on. on. So we appreciate and love you. Have a wonderful day. Remember, we are listener supported. We appreciate anything you are willing to do, and you can even partner with us. I have a YouTube channel called Iron Sharpens Iron, where you can partner with us and get private teachings that are stuff just like this. And I plan to have Apostle Brian on for us to talk about the extreme of the extreme, and just give you thoughts and ideas and concepts that you can research out and grasp. But we love you all. Thank you so much, Apostle Brian, for being on with me again today. So powerful, my brother.
Thank you. Thank you.
Don't forget to go back. Not a lot of activity in the chat room today, which is totally fine. But Father of Glory Ministries, FOGGM.org, and look for Apostle Brian's their giving link. And this is a season. I'm not going to just say much about it, but this is a season in their life and ministry that we would call. Boy, I'm probably going out on a limb here. I apologize, Apostle Brian, if I do, but that there's kind of this background hellish thing going on, but they're standing firm and walking in who they know they are, and it's a transition in their ministry, a transition in their journey. But this is a time, a special time, when you can give and you can be supportive. So if you're watching, if you're listening, please go to their website, click on their giving link, and send an offering of support to them. I know that they will be very grateful, and they're not going to be moved one way or the other. That's what I love about this, but it is important. I'm asking you to give and be a support to them. So we love you all. We'll see you next time. Bye bye, everyone. Have a great day.